Brianna Aldridge and Dom Tibbetts back here at One Bills Drive, where the Buffalo Bills hold their first full practice since that tough loss against the Denver Broncos. But Dom, more importantly, we got to hear from interim OC Joe Brady for the first time since the Bills announced the move from Ken Dorsey leaving to Joe Brady stepping in, and I think he was winning some hearts there at the podium today. He sounded like he was coming in with a realistic approach with obviously the guys that he's been working with, but he's going to be taking on a bigger role.
Yeah, I think realistic is the best way to look at it, because you look at some of the guys, some of the teams that the Bills have, right? You have Kansas City, Philly, the Cowboys game. I'm going to talk about those three basically all the way until each of them are done. So realistic, knowing that even though you have a very talented roster, you can't imagine this season is going to flip, all right? Because Joe Brady is not like this big rendezvous guy that has all these different answers. He does come from the same system. I mean, he was working under Ken Dorsey, who was under Sean McDermott. I do believe, however, just what fans love so much about Joe Brady is just a new perspective. It's not even so much what he was saying on the podium. I felt like what he was saying on the podium, Bree, was pretty coach talk. There wasn't anything that razzle-dazzled me out of this, to be honest with you. But I think what fans are more happy to hear is just something new and a new perspective of a guy who has identified the problems and knows they have to be corrected, because this team is just, again, the same thing we've been saying the last, month, Bree? This team is too talented to be playing and being in a state like this.
And I think I like what you said there, new, because Gabe Davis was asked, hey, what's going to change? You got something new? He's like, well, we're still the same offense. We're still running the same stuff for the most part. And Diggs went up there and said, he's excited to see what happens, because he did feel like something needed to change. Now, was this the change? Well, we get to find out sooner rather than later, because I think that's had a lot of people scratching their heads, because maybe this change should have been made Patriots game, right? But they waited to this game where the offense didn't do well, but there was a lot of other things that weren't going well, like having 12 people on the field.
Which I think is tough, because you throw Joe into a situation where everybody wants immediate answers, and that could have been done when you were sitting 5-3, or the few weeks back, like you mentioned. This becomes a whole new obstacle for Joe to have to climb, is the rising expectations of hey, you're the guy who needs to help get our offense going, because our offense going is what's going to play complementary football with our defense to get our season turned around. I think that part is very difficult, and I think Joe understands that, and I think part of the reason why, and I say, there was no razzle-dazzle, to your point, being realistic, I think he kind of knows that you have to keep things kind of in check here in terms of just how this team goes moving forward.
Yeah, this is a tryout for him for sure,
Yep.
and I think he understands that. And I think coming from that Carolina team, being in Ken Dorsey's shoes at one point is a little bit of a motivation. No, you don't want to go through that a second time, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, I don't think that was something they would do this season, but if he wants a chance to maybe have that head role job in the OC next season, he's going to have to do something a little bit spectacular in these next couple games and just show that he can give some spark to this offense. So we know what Joe Brady brings to this team, but how are you feeling? You got a chance to go in the locker room today. How are you just kind of feeling the overall mood?
I mean, there was not a lot of offensive guys in the locker room, to be honest with you, today.
They took off?
Oh, they were gone. They had to go lift. They had to go get their treatment. I did, however, Khalil Shakir did take some time to talk with me, and it was a good conversation. And Khalil touched on something that I know we heard from Gabe and we've heard it from Josh yesterday, was the word accountability. The guys in that locker room know that Ken Dorsey does not have a job in part because of what they did. So maybe take that as a sign of, okay, this team has taken a step in its maturity and its growth, because it understands what we were doing was not only not good enough to win games, it was also not good enough to keep guys on the staff employed. Khalil touched on that a lot, along with a lot of other guys that we've heard from so far this week. And I think that's an important step forward, because if none else, if the Bills aren't able to pull the wins that they need to get themselves in the playoff hunt, at least we can always look back and maybe say, as the small silver lining of victory, there was growth. There is at least something we can pull away from this season that the Bills identified, and they can use that as the footprint moving forward.
Yeah, and at this point, unfortunately, I think the growth might only just save some jobs. I don't think it's going to really save the locker room. So I'm hoping, this is a group of guys who have gotten close and gotten closer and then took a step back. So it's going to be really interesting just to see how the locker room comes together. It's a hard thing to ask, to try to come out with 10 wins, 9. People are talking, can the Bills get 7? They're at 5 right now. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but I'm just excited that we get to see this come Sunday. And like we heard from some of the players, they needed a change. Not really sure if this was it taking accountability.
Not sure if it's the one maybe they wanted. That's what they said today. That could also
Yeah.
just be their undying loyalty because
Yeah.
one thing we've learned from being in the locker room during all of our time here since we started covering the Bills is that there is loyalty in this locker room, and it is deep and it is rooted in the culture that Sean McDermott has set up. So you got to take that for face value or just for whatever you feel like it is. So again, we'll just see how things go from here.
I agree. We'll just see if Joe Brady can be that guy, and does he have that dog in him, I guess. We'll see.
He's got Tiger in him. Go Tigers. Go LSU.
I'm so done. That's it for now from Brianna Aldridge, Dom Tibbetts.